gentlemen, my name is Mike Familant. I produced a show in the shadow of Big Red Eye. If you have any questions for me, my booth is right over there. You can't miss it. Big Red Eye, Bigfoot research all over it. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker coming up to the podium now, Terry Windell is from Rock Hill, South Carolina, and has been actively investigating Bigfoot in the field with various groups since 2013. Over all that time, Terry has had several close encounters with the forest people. Terry is a firm believer that when dealing with the forest people, respect is key, and has learned that as long as there's respect between us, there'll be no problems. Let's hear it for Terry Windell.
All right, thank you, Mike. And yeah, I agree. Cutting Skinner off for me is almost blasphemous, but I'm gonna do the best I can. Guys, thank you guys. You've been spinning some awesome tunes back here today. Thank you so much. My name is Terry Windell. I'm otherwise known as Rock Hill Bigfoot. And as Mike mentioned, I've been doing this for a good while. My research area is pretty much the southeast. I've been in mostly the Warry National Forest in North Carolina, but I've been in other places in North Carolina. I've been in Alabama, I've been in Georgia, South Carolina. Had a really interesting special trip to visit someone who's a good friend of mine out in Oklahoma who has these folks living on her property. They told us today we were going to do an audio-visual program, but it wouldn't be a Bigfoot event without technical issues, so that's the way things work. So I'm going to wing it for you and do the best I can. I am a firm no-kill advocate, which means I never saw the logic in killing a Bigfoot to try and prove that it's alive. That makes absolutely no sense to me. A little bit about me is not all about me, I promise you. But one of my favorite movies right now is The Legend of Boggy Creek and Letters from the Big Man. If you have never seen Letters from the Big Man, watch that movie. Yes, sir. The suit that they use in that movie is probably the closest to date, before CG came out, of what they supposedly look like. Now, I do want to say one thing. If you were here earlier, you heard Michael Cook, my buddy, talking about stuff. And when he mentioned had anyone seen Bigfoot, I raised my hand. I have not seen them in the clear daylight like he has. What I saw was a dark, shadowy figure walking through a campsite in between some of the tents that we had. And it was from the side, walking between our tents, and had what appeared to be a headlamp on it. I thought it was kids that were with us that were playing in between the tents, goofing around. Until it dawned on me, if these are kids, they're mighty tall kids, because the head and shoulders of whatever this is above our tents. That'd make them 6 or 7 feet tall. This is not a kid. So that's as close as I've come to seeing one, and my goal right now, I want to see one. I've been real close to them before. I've actually been poked in my shoulder through my tent wall one night by one that walked up behind my tent and stood there and poked me in the shoulder. And you talk about some freaky experiences, that was a good one. But I actually grew up, the way I got interested in this, I grew up on a generational farm that my grandparents had. Back in those days, I was 7, 8, 9 years old, and this was about a 2,000-acre farm. I mean, this was huge. Been in our family for years. Classic old farmhouse, 2-story farmhouse. The tin roof, no curtains or screens certainly in the windows, pot-bellied stoves in the wintertime, and in summertime you just raise the windows and pray you got a cross breeze to cool off. And I would spend a lot of time there during harvest season and during planting season, helping my relatives, plant crops, and we had a family plot that the families could come and harvest stuff as they needed. So I would do that, and when I was done with my chores, with whatever was going on, then I had some free time to go roam in these woods. These woods this was a Disneyland for a 8 or 9 year old boy who liked the outdoors. And this area had, you name it, it was there. It had two or three springs that fed creeks. It had a fish pond. It had a regular pond. It's adjacent to a major South Carolina river. The majority of the land was old-growth trees. There was some logging going on for pulpwood. My uncles had the sawmill there, so they were cutting up stuff for lumber as well. We had cultivated farmland. Pick an animal, wildlife in South Carolina, we had it. There were no bears. We were a little too far inland and up for bears there. But bobcats, anything like that. We didn't have coyotes at the time because they had not made it that far east yet. So that's one of the things we didn't have. But I grew up knowing what the sounds of all these animals were. If you don't know what a red fox sounds like, a little tiny red fox will make a noise in the middle of the night that will make you think there's an 8-foot monster about to come out of the woods and eat your face off. If you've never heard a rabbit scream when something is attacking it, same thing. These are the most god-awful noises if you don't know what they are. I had learned what all that sounded like. How many people know that goats make a noise that sounds like people mumbling? You ever heard that? It sounds for all the world like people mumbling off in the distance. You can't understand what they're saying. So I knew what all that was. But occasionally, there'd be the sounds that I'd hear late at night up in my upstairs bedroom with all the windows open that I had no clue what they were. One of them was, it sounded like a woman screaming that would then turn into a wail, just a most mournful wail you've ever heard. Another one was what we know now as the classic Ohio howl, but I had no clue what that was. And back in these days, guys, I'm older than the internet. We didn't have the internet back then, so you couldn't Google search stuff and find out what it was. I had no clue what was going on. All I knew was there was something that I couldn't identify. I'd ask my relatives about it, my uncles that were there, and my cousins, and they would always be, "Oh, it was a cow." "No, sir, that wasn't a cow." "Oh, yeah, it was a cowboy. It was a cow. It was a cow." Okay. So, again, I would go out in the woods. This was back when 9-year-old kids could go play in the woods and not have any problems. I knew the area. I knew where the trails were. I knew how to get to the springs and navigate them. So, and it was, if I got lost, I knew that all I had to do was walk in any given direction for a little while, and I'd come out on a road, and I could either go to somebody's house who was a relative or a friend of a relative and call, and I'd get scolded, but I'd get picked up. So I was never really worried about that. So on this one particular day, I'm done with my chores, and I decided there's a creek that's fed by a spring that you can actually, at the time, you could drink straight out of the spring. That's very close to the house. And you know what? It's a hot day. I'm going to make a ham sandwich. Probably watercress is blooming down there, is growing. There might even be some blackberries because it's that time of year. I'm going to take a walk and go down to this spring and cool off. So I asked my mom, and she said, "Yep, okay, you know the rules though, just back before the sun goes down or else." I said, "Yes, ma'am." So I take off walking. Now, in all the time that I was in the woods by myself, I would always get this feeling like somebody was watching, like I wasn't alone. At the time, I didn't really understand what that was. I've come to understand now, with more experience, that means I had company. But it wasn't a feeling like we're going to snatch you up and that kind of stuff. Excuse me, I'm fighting a cold. I'm sorry. It was more like if I just turned around fast enough, I'd see somebody duck behind a tree or duck down behind a hill. But I never could catch anybody, so I just figured, okay, that's just what it feels like to be me walking in the woods. So I take off walking on this particular day, headed to the spring. I'm going down a logging access road that had been cut sometime earlier. I knew where this road went. I had walked it for years. And I'm walking down the road, and I come to a pine tree that's been there forever, about the size of this pillar here. Only the top of it today was snapped off about 8 feet up. Like something just reached up and just grabbed hold of it and went pop. The top's laying right there. And I thought, that's odd. I've been here all week and we haven't had any storms and there's nothing else snapped off around anywhere. It's kind of odd, but okay. So, sometimes trees just break and fall in the woods. That's just the way it is. So I didn't think anything too much of it, kept on walking. Got probably another 75 yards down the road. There's another pine tree. It snapped off the same way. There's the top of it laying right there. Now I'm thinking, okay, this is more than just strange. This is very unusual. And I'm getting this feeling like, somebody's watching me. This is okay. But I'm gonna keep going. I walk on down a little further. There's a third pine tree. Not only is this one snapped off at the top, it's pulled up out of the ground with the root ball still on it, turned upside down and jammed back in the hole. At that point, the little voice inside my head that I usually, when I don't listen to it, I get in trouble, started saying, "You don't need to go to the spring today." And I agreed with it. And I turned around and I went home. And I never said anything to anybody about it back then, because back then there was no such thing as Bigfoot. If you heard Michael speak earlier, back then Bigfoot wasn't real. We didn't talk about Bigfoot because you'd be labeled as one of those people. So I just didn't say anything. And let me add this while I'm still talking about the farm. I went back a long time ago. The farm doesn't exist anymore. It's been broken up and sold off. Families have moved and come and gone. The house is no longer there. So everything has changed. But some of my relatives still live around that area. And I was talking to one of them, and I said, "By the way, you know what I do, don't you, like in my spare time?" And he said, "No, what?" And I said, "I'm a Bigfoot field researcher." He went white. His eyes got about the size of golf balls, and he said, "Thank you for telling me that. I got a story to tell you. Have you got a minute?" Come to find out, it wasn't just me. It was my other relatives as well. Nobody was saying anything to each other because we didn't want to be told we were crazy or, "Oh, it's just a cow." So that kind of gave me some validation. After all those years, I felt a little better. But that's what got me interested. And from that point on, I wanted to know what was going on. As I said, you had to read books, these things we had called books. And so I read anything I could get my hands on. And back then, there wasn't a lot of information. There certainly wasn't the volume of information we have today. And what there was spotty and kind of unreliable. So, it was just one of those things I just took for granted. Okay, well, I just kind of put it on the side burner for a while. Well, later on in life, I got to the point where I decided, you know what, I'm kind of grown now, and got a house, got a job. I got an opportunity here. I don't want to miss this opportunity. I want to get out in the woods and find out what's going on. How do I do that? I had watched the TV shows where you go stomping around in the woods in the middle of the night. If you heard Michael speak earlier, that's not Bigfoot. That's TV. I'm not throwing shade on anybody by any means, but that's not really how it works. But I didn't know that. That was all I had to go on. So I started thinking, what do I do? I got online, because by this time the internet was around, and found a couple of guys that had a Bigfoot cryptid research team. It was just two of them, and they were researching up in the Uwharrie. So I called the number and just said, "Hey, I'm not crazy. I'm not an axe murderer. Can we meet up somewhere in public and maybe have dinner or a cup of coffee or something? I'd love to go out with you guys if you would take me, because I want to learn what's going on. I've had some experiences, and I want to figure out what's going on here." And fortunately enough for me, they said yes. So went out with them, and my very first experience, what I call official Bigfooting, was not what I thought it was going to be. But it ended up being a really good story. So I got up. We were sitting there up in Uwharrie. We're at a campsite. This is a public campsite. Back then, nobody knew that there were Bigfoot in the Uwharrie because Finding Bigfoot hadn't picked it up yet. So we're sitting at the table. I got my tent set up. We're having our evening meal, and we're sitting around. And at the time, I was doing video production work. I still am. I had cameras and microphones I had brought. I had no clue, what I was supposed to do, but I'm thinking I'm just taking everything I got because I don't know. So we're sitting at the picnic table. We've had our evening meal. The sun's starting to just start dipping a little bit, and I'm thinking, okay, what do we do? And I wait, and I'm like, I realize I'm the new kid, but shouldn't we be getting like all our packs on and getting ready to go walk out in the woods? And I finally, the sun was dipping down below the trees, and so I just looked over at one of the guys and said, when do we start? I'm just curious. I know I'm new, but when do we start? And he said, we already have. I said, what? He said, yeah. You don't go out walking in the woods like that. You'll step in a gopher hole or walk off a cliff and break a bone, and you don't want to do that. That's not how you do that. You build a fire, you sit, you talk quietly, maybe play some quiet music. If they're around and they're interested, which those there were, they'll find you. And I'm thinking, all right, well, let's give this a try. So I sit there, we're sitting there, we're chatting. Another hour goes by, the sun's getting lower, it's coming through the trees now, but it's setting. And I just looked over again and I said, so what do we need to do? You know, really, this is what we're going to do. You know, I'm getting a little tired. I'm going to go climb in my tent, and you guys come get me if something happens, because this has been a long day. Well, the guy that had told me before, you know, this where I already started, looked over at me and said, wait. I said, what do you mean wait? He said, wait. Okay. So another hour goes by. We're sitting there. I'm looking around like, all right, these guys they're making a monkey out of me. You know, this is a joke for them. Okay, look at the new guy. Ha ha ha. So I said, you know, guys, again, it's getting late. I'm tired. I'm gonna go get in the bed and sleeping bag. And then he looks over at me again and goes, wait. Not 5 minutes later, we hear, thump. There comes a rock getting tossed into camp. If I had the video capability, I could show you this. We've got video of the rock coming into camp, and they recovered the rock with the thermal and gave it to me. It sits on my desk today. That video is on my my YouTube channel, so if you want to watch it, you can go there. It's called Bigfoot Throws a Rock. But it is one of the, I think so far it's the only video of a rock actually being thrown into camp where you see the rock clearly, it hits the ground, and it gets recovered. If I'm wrong, somebody, you know, email me, tell me, but it's clear as day. There's the rock. It's going white hot because it's been held by something. Now this rock is maybe a little smaller than a golf ball. It's a pebble to them. But when they throw rocks, one of the things I've learned, they're not trying to hit us. They're trying to get our attention. If they wanted to hit us with a rock, they could bean us like a Major League Baseball pitcher throwing a fastball anytime they wanted to. They're trying to get our attention, either because they want to see what we'll do, or because they're trying to distract us because they're never alone. That's one of the things I've learned. It's very rare that you'll have one Bigfoot. Usually when you hear or see one, there's two others over here. And so that rock being thrown was to distract you to look over here while these two move, which denotes intelligence, which we'll get into later when we talk about what Bigfoot might be. So that was my very first experience with Bigfoot. I've had plenty, like I said, I've been poked in my shoulder through my tent wall. That was a really freaky one. I felt the nail on the finger. The finger was this big. It was not a dog's nose. It was not a stick. It was a finger. I heard him walk up. He poked me in the shoulder. I heard him go, like, what am I going to do with this guy? I'm freaking out, and then I realize he's not doing anything. He's poking me in the shoulder. Bigfoot's poking me in the shoulder. This is so cool. Oh my gosh, this is wonderful. So I went from there. And as I said, I've been close enough to him now that it's my opinion, if they wanted to hurt me, they've had every chance to do it. That night I got poked, he could have wrapped me up in my little tent and carried me off like a Terry burrito, and I'd have been disappeared and I wouldn't be here. But he didn't. He was just trying to get my attention. It was kind of like a, hey dude, I'm here. Just want to let you know. So I'm not saying they're harmless. A lot of the stuff that you hear about, oh, Bigfoot chased me out of the woods, he's throwing rocks and logs and screaming. My question is always, well, what were you doing? Were you perhaps, you camped, you found this spot on a stream, this beautiful beach, and you're fishing and you're pulling out trout like crazy. And you're camped there, the sun goes down. Well, that happens to be Mr. Bigfoot's grocery store. Mrs. Bigfoot has sent him out to go get the meal for the night for the kids. And if he comes home empty-handed, you guys out there that are married know, if the wife sends you to the grocery store with a list and you come home with something wrong or with nothing, it's not going to be a good night. So his job is to get past me that is now blocking him from getting his food. So now he's going to run me out any way he can. He's going to scare me out of that area. Again, if he was trying to hurt me, I wouldn't be talking to you. But it's not that they can't hurt you. I don't believe they intend to hurt you. Most of the sightings that we have heard about where are mainly somebody will, like Michael's, it was accidental. He's just in the right place at the right time. People walk around the corners of trails and, oh my gosh, there's a Bigfoot sitting there. The first thing the Bigfoot usually does is get up and leave. They're trying to get away from us. So, I have learned if I do have a sighting like that and they want to leave, let them leave. Just treat them like any other wildlife. Let them, take your cues from them, and if they want to leave, let them leave. So the story that, let's see where we are on time. I want to be respectful of that. The story that Michael started you off with, if you were here earlier, happened to Michael, another good friend of ours, Gwen Purcell, who spoke earlier today. She was there, and myself, we were at another festival speaking that was in Westminster, South Carolina. And we have all the three of us had met through this festival, and we've been back a couple of times and knew each other. So they're kind of like my Bigfoot family now. So the festival had made enough money to put us up this year, all the speakers, at this really nice house, way up in the mountains of South Carolina. It was in a little city called Walhalla. Everybody in Walhalla knows everybody else in Walhalla. It's about that size. And it's an old city or town. It's a very closed population. If you don't belong there, you know it. Not in a mean way, but it's just like, oh, you ain't from around here, are you? Okay. So this house is a gorgeous house up in the mountains near this area. This is about as far up in South Carolina as you can go and still be in South Carolina. So we're at this house. And it's the first night the festival has gone on. We're all back at the house, kind of winding down. It's got a big fire pit, and Michael's cooking this wonderful meal, and we're out sitting by the fire. And it's getting dark. It's dark. It's getting late, and we're just kind of sitting there, relaxing and talking back and forth with each other. And the moon's starting to come up, and I look up, and I notice there's a trail right across from the fire ring. I'm a Bigfoot investigator. We're out in the middle of nowhere in the mountains. There's a trail. I'm going for a walk. So I stand up and I just kind of say kind of quietly over my shoulder, hey guys, I'm going to take a walk. I'll be back in a little bit. And I hear from behind me Michael's voice go, well, Turry is clearly crazy, but I'm going with him. No flashlight, no headlamps, no infrared, no thermals, no nothing. We're just going to go walk in the woods on this trail that we've never been on and see where it goes. That's what we do. So we start walking. And we get into the trail. We can still kind of see the firelight from the big bonfire behind us coming through the leaves. But we're into the trail pretty good ways. We don't know where the end of the trail goes. We found out later that the trail runs pretty much east to west, with the house that we're staying at being at the east end, and we don't know what at the west end yet. So we're walking in the woods, and we're just talking quietly and walking along, and we hear, all of a sudden, dogs going off way down at the west end of the trail. And the dogs are just screaming. If you've been around dogs, you will learn that they have different kind of barks. They have a, hey, I want to be your friend bark. They have a, oh, you kind of scared me a little bit bark. And they have a, you don't belong here, I'm going to eat you bark. These dogs were they started off with the, I don't know what you are and I'm going to eat you bark, and went beyond that. So one of the first things that we look for as indicators is barking dogs. Could have been a deer, could have been other wildlife, we don't know. We didn't see what it was, but I looked at Michael, he looked at me, and it's like, let's just hang on here for a minute. Let's see what goes on. Well, the dog barking starts coming toward us, and it's getting closer. Different dogs are starting to go off, and it's like, okay, this is promising. Let's hang here and see what happens. So we're standing there, no flashlights, no nothing, moonlight coming through the trees. You can kind of see the dark gray stuff and the light gray stuff and the black stuff, and that's about it. And from where we were, the dogs come past us and go on behind us. And it's like, okay, this could be something moving, setting the dogs off as we're going. That's classic stuff when you're out investigating. Let's hang on and see what happens. This goes on, and it goes on past us, back up beyond the house, as far as we can tell. The guys sitting around the fire heard the barking. Now, at some point here, we hear from the far end on the west end of the trail, we hear, whoa! I can't do it, I'm sorry. Beyond the Ohio howl. I mean, it rattled our teeth, and it was a ways off. I look at Michael, he looked at me, and we start giggling like little girls. It's like, dude, that was a squatch. That was a squatch. Yeah, I heard it. I know what that is. Yeah. Okay, this is cool. Let's hang on and see what happens. The dogs start coming back. And I looked at Michael and said, that was Big Daddy calling the kids home. He said, yep, we're done for the night. Dogs went back barking. Everything quieted down. And it's like, okay, this is really cool. We got to come back and do this again tomorrow night. So we went back and talked to the people that were sitting around the fire pit and said, did you guys hear that? They heard the howl. So it's like, oh yeah, we're going the next night. So we went back, and at this point it's like, do we tell the festival people what happened? Because they're going to look at us and go, yeah, you guys are here at our Bigfoot festival, Bigfoot investigators at a house in the woods, and you had something happen. Okay. But we decided, I had gotten to be good friends with the festival director, and I just said, let me just kind of float it to him and let's see what happens. And so we got back in the next day, and I found the guy after the festival was over. I said, by the way, we kind of had something happen last night. Can I talk to you for a minute? We had something happen at the house. He got this grin on his face that was about this big and started chuckling. And I was like, what? And he said, we set you guys up. We put you there intentionally to see if something would happen. Because that area, the house is new, the little division that it's in is very new, and that area has a recent history of Bigfoot activity. And we knew at some point, somebody in this group that you guys had was going to find that trail and go walk down it. So we set you up. Yeah, there's something going on there. So at that point, I'm on the phone with my wife going, sweetie, can I stay over one more night? I was supposed to go home the next day for the second day of the festival after we had spoken. And I said, we had something happen. Can I stay over another night? And she just started laughing. And I love my wife. She puts up with what I do, and I got a great wife. So, and she married me knowing what I do. So I got to give her props. She said, yeah, of course, stay over. So we do the festival thing. The second day, we go back the next night. Word had gotten around, apparently, that we'd had something go on. I swear they brought in a bus full of people. We had people running around with 8 million lumen candle power watt, whatever, flash, everywhere. A tree, an acorn would fall, bam, 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 lights going on everywhere. Michael and I looked at each other and it's like, yeah, let's just kind of let this die down. We may not get anything tonight. So things started dying down a little bit. The moon's up again, just like the night before. And I kind of look over at Michael, and he gives me the nod. And it's like, so we just quietly kind of sneak off into the woods, go back down this trail. Now, we still, at this point, don't know where the trail goes. So we're walking down the trail, and we hear the dogs going off again. Same exact thing, same exact pattern. So I look at Michael, he looks at me, and I'm like, you want to keep going a little bit? He said, yeah. So we're walking, and all of a sudden, I get this feeling that started in my heart. This was not getting zapped. This was something different. If you were a kid, and if your kids now don't do as I say, if you ever touched a transistor battery to your tip of your tongue, you get that little kind of thing. It doesn't hurt. Yeah, I was an idiot. I was an idiot as a kid. I admit it. But you guys have done it. I know there's some of you out there that did it. That's what it felt like. It started here, and it radiated out through my entire body, down to my toes and my fingers. And I just stopped and said, whoa. And Michael's beside of me, and he said, what? I said, I don't know, man. I feel weird. I've never had this before. It's a weird feeling. It's kind of like I couldn't get the words out of my mouth fast enough. He said, electricity. And I said, yeah. You got it too? He said, yeah. I said, did this ever happen to you? He said, no. I said, okay. We got something here. Let's just see what goes on. About that time, he looked over at me and said, Terry, tree over at your 10 o'clock on the side of the trail. Do you see? And I said, eyes? And he said, yeah. There's something over there. I wish we had visuals I could show you. I don't have a picture of it, but I have a representation that I made up that would help you understand what we're looking at. But there's two orangish red eyes right over on the edge, and they're looking at us. It's forward-facing eyes. They're not round like a deer or a dog. They look like human eyes that are glowing. And it's like, all right, this is really interesting. Well, let's back up a little bit and just see what happens. You game? And he said, yeah. So we backed up, 5 paces back, like a switch. It's gone. I looked over at him and said, you got anything? He said, no. You? I said, no. It's gone. I said, you want to do an experiment? You game to do something? He said, yeah. What you got in mind? I said, I tell you what. You stay here. I'm going to walk back up 5 feet or 5 paces. I think we got too close to something. And I think that was them telling us to back up. But let's do an experiment and see if we can't kind of confirm that. So I said, you stay here. I'm going to walk forward back to where I was. And Michael, if I'm telling this wrong, you tell me. So I said, here I go. Before I started walking, I do this thing that I've learned to do that I just call talking to the woods. I'm just talking to the darkness at this point, as far as I know. And I said, guys, my name's Terry. It's my buddy Michael. We don't mean you any harm. We were just out kind of walking around and want to learn about you guys. We think we got too close to you for some reason, and that you were trying to let us know to back up. So we're going to try and check and see if we want to understand if that's what you were telling us or not. The eyes are still there. Everything's there. I said, my buddy Michael is going to stay right here. I give you my word, he will not move. I'm going to walk up 5 paces to where I was before, and I won't go any further than that. I give you my word. If we got too close, and that's what you were trying to tell us, do to me what you did to both of us before, but don't do it to him. Here I go. Michael's staying right there. I walk up on the 5th step, again, like a switch. I got it all over. I look back over my shoulder. I said, you got anything? He said, nope. You got anything? I said, yep. We were too close. So I just said, okay, guys, we get it. We were too close. We want to respect that. We're going to back up. Matter of fact, we're just going to walk back. So I'm not going to turn around. I'm just going to take 5 paces back, and we'll just thank you guys for being here, and then all that kind of stuff. We turn around and go back to the campsite, or to the fire, and we're both just sitting there like, what in the heck just happened to us? Because at that point, neither of us had anything happen. You hear about people getting zapped, what they call zapped with infrasound, where it makes you feel like you're going to throw up, or you get this fight or flight response that you need to run away. It's kind of like what lions do to their prey when they roar. And you see the zebra, the lion's gonna take the zebra down. He roars at it, and you see the zebra just stand there and quiver for just a minute. It's not that. This was something completely different. And as a matter of fact, I had to call my friend who was in Oklahoma, who was kind of like my Bigfoot auntie that kind of got me started into the tribal stuff. She is a Native American who grew up with them on her grandmother's property and was always taught that they were a people, but not like us kind of people. So I called her and I said, listen, I had something weird happen. I told her what happened, and she started laughing, and she said, yeah, they do that. We've got them out here where I'll take people on a walk around the trail. We'll get to a certain spot at the trail. Everybody that's in the group will bust out laughing for no reason at all. They have no idea why they're laughing, and they can't stop. And then we'll walk on past that. Nobody's laughing again, and you don't know why you were laughing before. She said, that's stuff they do. So at this point, I'm like, okay, well, I've apparently learned something here. This is new. So one of the things I've learned is you never say never when you're dealing with this kind of stuff, when you're out in the field. There are as many different opinions of what Bigfoot might be as there are people to have those opinions. And what I'm going to share with you here is just my opinion. If you have a different opinion, that's okay. Doesn't mean we still can't be friends and go hang out and eat pizza together. It just means we think a little differently. But if everybody's thinking alike, what's the story? Somebody's not thinking. So you can always learn something, even if it's how not to do something. So I have learned you don't poo-poo anybody just because it's something that you haven't had happen to you before. Michael mentioned about hearing stuff in his head earlier. I have never heard mind speak in my head, but I've only lived in this one head all of my life. I don't know what goes on in your head. I can make some assumptions based on human anatomy and physiology, but I don't know how you perceive the world. None of us do. We only have lived in this head. So can I say that doesn't happen? No, and I'm not gonna. If I would love to have the experience, and that way I can say, yeah, it definitively happens, and if you don't believe me, that's fine, because I've seen stuff and had stuff happen. If I hadn't been there, I wouldn't believe me either. That does not hurt my feelings. If you are a sensitive person and are prone to having your feelings hurt, don't get into this. There are people that would love to just tear you down inside the Bigfoot community and out. And you just have to let that stuff roll off and not worry about it. Because I was there. I can't tell you what I saw because I don't know. But I can describe to you what it looked like. And that's as far as I can go at this point. There are no experts. Again, not meaning to throw shade on anybody, but we don't know. Until the day that Mr. Bigfoot walks out of the woods and I'm standing there with a camera and he walks over and goes, hey, Terry, come here a minute. My people and I have decided that we want to tell our story. It's time for the world to know about us. We'd like you to record us. I'm going to stand here and kind of clean out my fur a little bit, and you get your camera set up. Until we get that on tape, we don't know. We're making suppositions, and it's theory all based on experiences that have come from a lot of different people. So again, don't shut things off just because it doesn't fit in what your belief system is. There's a very good book. It's one of my favorite books right now. Ron Moorhead has a book called I just went blank. Quantum Bigfoot. It gets into quantum physics. It gets into dimensional stuff. We are three-dimensional people. Even though we live in a four-dimensional world, time is the fourth dimension. We have no control over time. We can't move backwards and forwards in time. So, according to quantum physics, depending on which version of string theory you subscribe to, there can be as many as 10 or 11 dimensions that we have no way of accessing on this plane. So, compare that with a two-dimensional being who you put a bucket in flatland world. The two-dimensional person has no way to see what's inside that bucket. They don't know it's hollow. All they see is there's a block right there, a line. So if you take us and lay another dimension on top of that, we have no way of accessing in our world what's inside the Bigfoot bucket. We can look down inside that bucket and see there's a ball in that bucket. A two-dimensional person can't see that. Is that what's going on with Bigfoot? You hear people talk about cloaking. I've never seen one cloak or decloak, but I'm not going to say it doesn't happen. I don't know the mechanism behind it, but after reading this book, quantum physics kind of gives it some credence. So, never shut yourself off. That's one of the things I've learned. Always be willing to listen to new ideas. Let's see if I've got, see where I'm doing on time here. All right, so what is Bigfoot? If you were here earlier and heard my buddy Michael talking about it, there are all kinds of different opinions on what's Bigfoot. This is mine. I believe, from my experiences and from what I've read, Native American culture that I've studied and people that I've talked to, I believe Bigfoot is a people. They are like us in some ways. They are not like us in a lot of other ways. Who came first, us or them? I don't know. I will say this. When we go out in the woods, we have to take special food with us. I mean, unless you're like a serious bushcrafter, and even then, you can't harvest enough food just walking in the woods to keep you alive for a month. We have to take special food. We have to take filtered water or ways to filter our water. We have to take clothing that keeps us warm or dry. We have to take tents or tarps to sleep under to keep the rain off of us. Bigfoot goes where he wants to. Bigfoot eats what he wants to. We don't know what he eats. We're assuming it's sort of like a black bear because of the size of the creature, but we don't know. But he's obviously eating something. There are no Bigfoot supermarkets, except for the trout that I was talking about earlier. They don't need houses or tents. They sleep, from what all accounts I've seen from the Olympic project out west, they sleep in ground nests. I've seen a couple of those up in the mountains. It's bigger than a deer. They sleep in ground nests, just boughs on the ground. They don't need raincoats. They have hair that keeps the fur off, or keeps the rain off of them. They don't need to worry about hot or cold. So with all that in mind, who is better suited to live on this planet, us or them? Makes you wonder. I do believe that Bigfoot live in family groups. I believe they live in, at the very, very minimum, a mom and dad Bigfoot and kid Bigfoots. Or feet. I've never figured out what that is, plural of Bigfoot. They could possibly also live in clans and even larger in tribes. So, you start thinking about it. Mr. Bigfoot's out getting the groceries. Somebody's got to take care of the kids. It's either mom or an older sibling or an aunt Bigfoot or somebody. So, even animals, bears, other animals do that to some degree. So, are they, that's the way they are like us. They are unlike us in that they can do things we don't understand. They don't need all the stuff that we need to live in the woods. And there's a Native American legend that says that they at one time had fire, but they gave it up because it made them too easy to find when our kind got here. So who knows? I can't prove that. I don't know. I have learned there is a lot of wisdom in Native American teachings. They know stuff that we don't know. I had a very good friend who was a tribal elder for the Catawba Indian Nation back where I'm from, and they know stuff that they don't tell us, and I don't blame them. I would talk to my friend a lot of times about things, and we get to some points where she would just stop and smile and just go, and I knew at that point, okay, that's all you can, I get it, no problem. So just because something hasn't come from our modern era doesn't mean you need to discount it. There is wisdom in the teachings of our elders. So pay attention to it. I do believe that, my motto is respect between us. I do believe that if you respect them, that you will earn respect in return. There'll be no problems as long as we understand, you're on that side of the river, I'm on this side of the river. My friend in Oklahoma has a garden. She has them living on her property now. And at one point, at one point, they were raiding her garden. They were cleaning her garden out. And she just went down and said to the woods, guys, listen, I got to feed my family out of this garden. You can have half. If you'll have half, we'll be fine. To this day, if there's 10 watermelons ready to be picked, she'll go out the next day, 5 are gone. If there's 10 rows of corn that are ready, she'll go out the next day to harvest it, 5 of those rows have been cleaned off. Somehow or another, they understand. I don't know how. Again, there are no experts among us. If anybody comes to you and says, I'm a Bigfoot expert, my advice to you is walk slowly away and just leave them alone. I think I'm getting close to my time. Does anybody have any questions? I have more questions myself than I have answers. And if you ask me a question, just be aware that my answer might be, I don't know. Because I don't know everything yet. Does anybody have any questions or anything? Yes, sir. Okay, good. The question was, if somebody is a newbie and wants to have a Bigfoot encounter, what can you do? One of the things I would do is advise you to try and seek out somebody around you who's been doing this like I did, because much like me, I had no clue what I was doing at first. But if you just want to have an encounter, look for areas where there have been reported sightings. Look for areas where there are legends about the witchy woman who lived in the mountains, where if you walk through the woods whistling at night, she'll come cast a spell on you. Or the hairy wild man that lives on top of the mountains that's always been up there. Look for that kind of stuff. Go out, sit peacefully. You don't have to go stomping through the woods. I would advise against that because, again, you don't know where you're going. In the middle of the dark in the forest, you can step on a root ball and break your ankle very easily. You can walk off the edge of a cliff into a gully. I always carry a personal locator with me when I go out now that's attached to myself, not my pack, because when people fall a lot of times, if you fall off a cliff, your pack can come off. I want that personal locator stuck to my body. I carry a compass. I know how to land nav. Practice up on your camping skills, your basic camping skills a little bit. Don't think of it as going out looking for Bigfoot. Think of it as camping with a purpose. Nothing may happen. It may take you 3 or 4 times. Let them get used to you being there. If they're in the area and they're curious, they'll find you. Build a campfire, cook some food, talk quietly, play some quiet music on your phone if you want to. Do all the unusual stuff. We are their TV. They are often as curious about us as we are about them, especially the young ones. The young ones will usually come in closer because they're looking at us going, all right, let's see what these guys do. Matter of fact, you can almost see them, some of the rock throwing, you can almost see them going, all right, Bill, you throw the rock, and when you do, I'm going to shake this tree over here. All right? Bill throws the rock, and they're, oh my gosh, look at these guys. Oh, they're running around. They look, oh my gosh, they've dropped all their stuff. All right, I'm going to move over here and shake this tree. You yell, and let's see what they do. You can almost see them in your head doing that, playing with us. So that would be my advice, is practice up on your camping skills a little bit until you are comfortable going out, setting up a tent, cooking a meal or two in the woods, learn how to purify water just in case, and have some basic gear with you, have a way to make fire. A big lighter works great, first time every time, they're cheap. Take a compass, learn how to do some basic land navigation, and then just think of it again as camping with a purpose. Just go sit, have fun. If they're there and they want to come see you, they'll find you. So I hope that helps. And again, be respectful. Remember that when we go in the woods, we are in their house. How would you feel if somebody you didn't know walked into your house, sat down on your couch uninvited, propped their muddy feet up on your coffee table, pulled out some kind of snack, tore the paper off, and scattered it all over your house? You get upset. That's your house. They're not even invited there. Same thing with them. Think of it that way. Respect between us. There'll be no problems. Anybody else got any questions? Okay. I think that's pretty close to my time. I want to be respectful of the next thing that's coming up. So, Mike, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Guys, thank you again for the great tunes you've been spinning. Thank you guys for sticking around to the bitter end. I really appreciate you. Check me out. my social media, and I've got a website, rockhillbigfoot.com. rockhillbigfoot.com. You can email me and get to my social media through there. Thanks a lot.
Ladies and gentlemen, Terry Windell.
Thank you, Terry.